Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. It is Thursday, January 29th, 2026. If you are listening to this in New York City, or honestly, anywhere in the tri-state area, you are likely feeling it in your lower back right now.
It is the universal soreness of the shoveling class.
That is the truth. We are just digging out from what the news is calling winter storm Fern, or, the monster storm. And I have to say, the psychological whiplash here is real. We spent the last few years talking about the death of winter.
The snow drought.
Right. I remember back in 2023, Central Park recorded something pathetic. It was 2.3 inches of snow for the entire season. We had entire winters where I didn't even know where my boots were.
No, absolutely.
And then this week happens.
Nature has a way of reverting to the mean and sometimes doing it violently.
Violently is the right word. We didn't just get snow. We got a stress test. A bomb cyclone. And while looking out the window was, terrifyingly beautiful, what we are doing today is peeling back that white layer. We aren't just looking at the weather map. We are looking at the machinery of the city underneath it.
We're looking at city safety, but not the kind involving sirens and, crime tape. We're talking about the invisible infrastructure management that prevents a cold snap from becoming a mass casualty event.
We have a massive stack of documents to get through today to understand what just happened to New York. We're analyzing the 2025 Power Trends report from the NYISO, that's the grid operator. We have the reliability assessments, the breakdown of this thing called the Picker rule, and of course the breaking news reports on how the boroughs handled the deluge.
And what we are going to find is that while you were worrying about your sidewalk, there was a high-stakes chess match happening in control rooms across the state. Decisions made 3, 4, even 5 years ago regarding old power plants and gas pipelines, they determine whether the lights stayed on this week.
So let's get into it. The mission statement for this deep dive is simple. How does New York City manage safety when the environment tries to freeze it solid?
And to understand that management response, we really have to respect the scale of the event itself.
Let's start with the snow drought context, because I think that really contributed to the shock. We got complacent.
We absolutely did. For the last few years, the atmospheric setup was essentially blocking winter. We had these strong El Nino patterns, warmer coastal waters.
All right.
And the storms that did form, they just tracked way too far north or they turned into rain over the city. It created this false sense of security that the climate had permanently shifted away from major snow in NYC.
I fell for it. I thought, okay, we are a rain city now. I was fine with it.
And then January 2026 arrives, the pattern flipped. We had this block of cold air just locked in place from Canada, and then this moisture-laden system came churning up the coast.
And when they met,
the pressure dropped so fast, that's the bombogenesis process, that it acted like a vacuum cleaner, just sucking moisture from the ocean and dumping it as snow. A phenomenal amount of snow.
The numbers are staggering. Central Park hit 11.4 inches in a single day on January 25th. That's a daily record. But, I always get annoyed when the news only talks about Central Park.
It's the official measurement, yeah, but it's rarely the reality for the whole city.
Exactly. New York is an archipelago of islands and, a chunk of mainland. Yeah. When you look at the borough-by-borough breakdown from this storm, you see why city management is such a nightmare. You can't just have one plan.
Right. Let's take Washington Heights, up in northern Manhattan.
They got the worst of it, 14.9 inches.
Nearly 15 inches. And you have to think about the geography of Washington Heights versus, say, Midtown. Washington Heights is practically a mountain range compared to the rest of the city. It's all narrow streets, steep hills, incredible density.
Oh, yeah. If you don't clear 15 inches of snow off a hill in Washington Heights instantly, you have articulated buses sliding backward. You have ambulances that literally cannot reach the hospital.
That is a specific safety management challenge. It's a different problem. You need different equipment there. You need salt spreaders that can actually handle the grade.
Right.
Now, compare that to Staten Island, where Huguenot hit 14.0 inches.
That's a totally different beast. That's suburban sprawl.
It is car dependent. In Manhattan, if the streets aren't perfectly cleared, people can still walk to a bodega. They can get on the subway. In large parts of Staten Island, if those 14 inches aren't moved, you have people trapped in their homes.
Completely isolated.
If they have a medical emergency, what do? The management strategy there has to be about clearing arterial roads first to prevent that kind of isolation.
Then you have the Bronx. Fordham got 13.5 inches. Brooklyn-Williamsburg got a solid foot, 12.0 inches. And Queens, Whitestone, hit 11.1 inches.
Every single borough was in the double digits. That's what's so rare. Usually we see this heavy gradient where, maybe the Bronx gets buried and Staten Island just gets rained. This was a blanket approach by Mother Nature.
And it brings us to the most tragic part of the safety equation here. We talk about snow, but the real killer this week, it was the cold.
That's right. The snow is disruptive. The cold is lethal. Mayor Zohran Mamdani held a press conference that was quite stark. He said the danger of this weather cannot be overstated.
He wasn't talking about slipping on ice?
No, not at all. He was talking about the fact that 5 New Yorkers were found dead outside before the snow even started accumulating.
That detail really shook me. 5 people.
It highlights the most vulnerable edge of city safety management. These individuals, they succumbed to the cold. We saw the coldest sustained temperatures in 8 years. When we talk about managing safety, the first line of defense isn't a snowplow, it's a shelter. It's outreach teams trying to get homeless New Yorkers indoors.
It reframes the whole concept of infrastructure. We usually think of bridges and tunnels, concrete, but the heating systems and public housing, the capacity of the city's shelters, that is safety infrastructure too.
It's the difference between life and death.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. If the heat goes out in NYCHA complex during a bomb cyclone, you don't just have angry tenants. You have a potential mass casualty event. Hypothermia sets in much, much faster than people realize, especially for the elderly and for children.
Which brings us to the absolute core of today's deep dive, the invisible shield. The only reason the rest of us were able to sit inside, complain about the snow, and watch Netflix is because the electric grid held up.
The grid is the backbone of modern safety. There's no other way to put it. You cannot run a city of 8 million people in sub-freezing temperatures without reliable electricity. It powers the blowers for the gas furnaces, it powers the space heaters, the elevators, the traffic lights, everything.
But most of us have no idea how it works. We just flip the switch.
And that ignorance is a luxury. But the people managing it, specifically the NYISO, they don't have that luxury.
Let's define them. NYSO.
The New York Independent System Operator.
It sounds like a secret society or something out of a spy movie.
They're more like the air traffic controllers of the energy world. They're a nonprofit. They don't own the power plants, and they don't own the transmission lines. They sit in a high-tech control center up near Albany, watching these massive screens that show the flow of electrons across the entire state in real time.
So they are the referees.
They're the market makers and the traffic cops. They run an auction every 5 minutes to buy the cheapest power available, and they have to ensure that supply exactly matches demand, second by second. Because if supply and demand get out of sync for even a few seconds, you can wreck the equipment and the grid goes dark.
Now, they release this 2025 Power Trends report, and usually reports with trends in the title are, good for curing insomnia, but this one reads like a thriller if you know what you're looking at.
It really does. It outlines a conflict that has been building for years. A genuine standoff between 2 different definitions of safety.
On one side, we have environmental safety.
Right. New York State has some of the most aggressive climate laws in the country. The CLCPA, that's the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. And part of that push for safety involves cleaning up the air we breathe.
Which makes total sense. We know that burning fossil fuels in dense neighborhoods causes asthma, heart disease, all sorts of terrible issues.
Especially in places like Astoria, Queens, or parts of Brooklyn. I mean, these areas have been dubbed Asthma Alley for a reason. They have hosted these old, dirty power plants for decades.
These are the peaker plants.
Correct. A peaker plant is exactly what it sounds like. It sits idle maybe 90% of the time. But when demand peaks, like on the hottest day of July, or in this case, the coldest day of January, they fire them up.
So they are the reserves, the backup plan.
They're the clutch players. But because they're old and because they have to ramp up and down so quickly, they tend to be very inefficient and very dirty. They spew out nitrogen oxides or NOx particulates, sulfur.
So the Department of Environmental Conservation, the DEC, stepped in.
They did. Back in 2019, they enacted what's called the peaker rule. It gave these plant owners an ultimatum. Install expensive pollution controls to clean up your emissions or shut down entirely by May 2025.
That deadline, May 2025, that was what, 8 months ago now?
Right. And the goal was clear. Remove the pollution source to protect public health. That's safety through clean air, an environmental justice issue.
But then the NYISO, the grid guys, they raised their hand and said, hold on, not so fast.
And this is where the tension just explodes.
Yeah.
In July of 2023, NYISO ran a study called the STAR Report. That stands for Short-Term Assessment of Reliability.
I'm picturing a bunch of engineers sweating over computer terminals.
That is not far off. They run what are called Monte Carlo simulations. They simulate thousands and thousands of different weather scenarios. What if it's 98 degrees? What if it's 102? What if a major generator fails unexpectedly? What if the wind stops blowing for 2 days?
And what did they find regarding New York City?
They found a reliability violation.
That sounds like a polite euphemism.
It is engineering speak for blackout risk, a very high risk of blackouts. They calculated that if all those dirty peaker plants shut down on schedule in May 2025, and then we hit a major heat wave or winter storm like Fern, the city simply would not have enough local generation to maintain voltage.
How big was the gap they found?
They identified a specific deficiency of roughly 446 megawatts inside the New York City zone.
We hear megawatts a lot. Can you put that in human terms for us?
Sure. A good rule of thumb is that 1 megawatt powers about 800 to 1,000 homes, depending on usage. So 446 megawatts. That's roughly enough power for 500,000 homes.
500,000. That's the entire population of Staten Island, or a massive chunk of the Bronx.
Exactly. So the grid operator is looking at a spreadsheet that says, if we follow this perfectly logical and important environmental law, 500,000 homes might go dark during an emergency.
And going dark isn't just an inconvenience. In a summer heat wave, it means no AC for the elderly. In a winter storm like Fern, it means no heat. That is an immediate life safety threat.
It's a clear conflict.
So you have immediate safety keeping the lights and heat on versus long-term safety, which is cleaning the air. Who won?
In the short term, the lights won. The Niña has the authority to designate certain plants as necessary for reliability. They can essentially override the shutdown order from the DEC.
They pulled a veto.
It's a temporary retention, technically. They told the owners of the Gowanus 2 and 3 units and the Narrows 1 and 2 units, these are literally floating barges with gas turbines on them in Brooklyn, to keep running.
Wait, floating barges?
Yes, literally floating power plants. They're moored in places like the Gowanus Canal. It's old technology. And they kept about 508 megawatts of this old, dirty capacity online past the deadline.
So during Winter Storm Fern, when I turned on my heater, the electricity might have been coming from those exact plants that were supposed to be closed for pollution.
It is highly, highly likely. Those plants are located in what we call load pockets. The grid isn't just a big pool of electricity. It has bottlenecks. And Brooklyn and Queens are very constrained. You need power generated inside those boroughs to keep the voltage stable. You can't just push it all in from upstate New York.
Wow, that has to be a tough pill to swallow for the people living next to those barges. They were promised cleaner air in 2025.
It's a bitter pill.
Yeah.
And it highlights the incredible difficulty of this transition. I mean, we can pass laws saying, be green by this date, but the physics of the grid has to catch up. The reality has to catch up.
But the plan was never to keep them open forever, though. There was supposed to be a replacement coming online.
The White Knight. The CHPE.
The Champlain Hudson Power Express.
Correct. This is a massive infrastructure project. It's a high-voltage, direct current cable being buried. It runs all the way from the Canadian border down the Hudson River and plugs directly into Queens.
And it's bringing clean energy.
It's designed to bring 1,250 megawatts of clean hydropower from Quebec.
That sounds like plenty to replace the 500 megawatts of dirty peaker.
It is. It's more than enough. But here's the problem. Construction takes time. The project is moving along, but it wasn't fully ready to take over that load by the May 2025 deadline. The current estimate for full service is spring 2026.
So we are in the bridge phase.
Exactly. We are keeping the old clunkers running just long enough to get the giant extension cord from Canada plugged in. But if the NYSO hadn't made that controversial decision to keep Gowanus and Narrows open, and then Winter Storm Fern hit,
we would have been in serious trouble.
We would have been balancing on a knife's edge. You take 500 megawatts of instant reliable capacity out of the system during a bomb cyclone, and you leave yourself with zero margin for error. If one other thing broke, a transformer blew, a transmission line snapped, you start shedding load.
And shedding load means rolling blackout.
It means rolling blackouts. And in 15-degree weather, a rolling blackout is incredibly dangerous.
It leads to frozen pipes, which then burst and destroy housing stock. It leads to hypothermia. It shuts down life support equipment in people's homes.
Exactly.
So, okay, the grid held. But the scary thing the report points out is that the nature of this threat is changing. We are so used to worrying about summer. I have vivid memories of the 2003 blackout. It was hot, sweaty, everyone walking across the Brooklyn Bridge.
That's right. New York has historically been a summer peaking system. We build the entire grid. We spend billions of dollars to handle that one day in late July when everyone gets home at 5 p.m. and cranks the air conditioning at the same time.
But the 2025 Power Trends report says that is flipping.
It's the most significant shift in the history of the grid. The projections show that by the 2040s, New York will become a winter peaking system. The biggest stress will be in January, not July.
And that's because of electrification.
Right. We are methodically, as a matter of state policy, electrifying the heating sector. We are telling buildings to get rid of their oil boilers and their gas furnaces and install electric heat pumps.
And electric cars, too.
And electric cars,
yeah.
Which is great for carbon emissions. It's necessary for the climate. But think about the physics of it. A heat pump is a magic piece of technology. It moves heat from the outside air into your house. But when it's really, really cold, like 5 degrees, Fahrenheit heat pumps have to work much, much harder. Their efficiency drops.
So they draw more power.
They draw significantly more power, exactly when the grid is already most stressed.
Yeah.
And unlike air conditioning, which you can turn off for an hour and just be sweaty and miserable, you cannot turn off the heat in January. It's not an option.
So the demand is spikier and it's more critical.
Spikier, more critical, and longer lasting. A heat wave might last 3 days. A cold snap can last a week. And the report predicts winter demand statewide will grow by 14,000 megawatts by 2040.
I want to pause on that number. 14,000 megawatts. We said earlier that 500 milliW is about 500,000 homes.
So 1,000 milliW is roughly 1 million homes. 14,000 milliW is, it's like building 14 new nuclear power plants or installing thousands and thousands of offshore wind turbines. It is a staggering amount of new generation we need to build just to stay where we are reliability-wise.
And if we don't build it,
then the winter peak breaks the system. But there's another layer to this winter risk that, frankly, I find even more terrifying. It's what the engineers call the gas constraint.
This sounds like a physics problem.
It is a supply chain problem. Right now, New York City relies heavily on natural gas power plants. Even with all the renewables coming online, gas is still the workhorse that keeps the lights on today.
Okay, that makes sense.
But where does that gas come from? It comes from pipelines, mostly coming up from Pennsylvania in the south. Those pipelines have a fixed width. They can only move so many molecules of gas per hour.
A physical limit, a bottleneck.
Correct. Now, on a day like we had this week, the coldest day of the year, who wants that gas?
Well, the power plants want it to make electricity.
And
homeowners, people with gas furnaces, businesses.
Exactly. And not just homeowners, hospitals, schools, office buildings. The local distribution companies, think Con Edison or National Grid's gas division, they have what are called firm contracts for that gas. They paid for the right to get it first.
Because keeping people from freezing in their homes is priority number one.
It is the law. Human needs direct heating take precedence over power generation. So on the absolute coldest days, the gas companies can and do essentially turn off the tap to the power plants.
Wait, so let me get this straight. On the day we need the electricity the most, because all the heat pumps are running on overdrive, the power plants can't get the fuel they need to make the electricity.
That is the gas constraint. It is the nightmare scenario. You have a sky-high demand for power, but your gas plants are sitting there starving for fuel because all of it is being burned in basements in Queens and the Bronx.
That seems like a fatal flaw in the design of the system.
It would be if we didn't have a backup. New York City has a specific requirement that has saved us time and again. It's called dual fuel capability.
Dual fuel?
Most of the major power plants in New York City and on Long Island are required to be able to burn two things, usually natural gas and ultra-low sulfur diesel, which is basically just clean heating oil.
So they are hybrids.
They're preppers. They have massive tanks of oil sitting on site just waiting. When the gas pressure in the pipeline drops, the control room gets a call. They flip a switch, literally changing the fuel injection system, and the plant starts burning oil instead of gas.
Burning oil to make electricity? That sounds dirty.
It is dirty. It emits more carbon and more pollutants than gas.
Yeah.
But remember the trade-off we keep talking about. It is 10 degrees outside. The gas is gone. If you don't burn the oil, the grid collapses.
It's the emergency parachute.
It is. And it accounts for 74% of the generating capacity downstate. If we didn't have those oil tanks this week, Winter Storm Fern would have been a catastrophe, period.
So we are cleaner than we used to be, but when push comes to shove, we are burning oil to survive.
We are. And the regulators are getting very, very serious about this risk. The NYSRC, that's the New York State Reliability Council, they implemented a new rule in 2024. They fundamentally changed the math.
How so?
They used to run their models assuming that gas would mostly be there. Now, for their winter planning, they're running models where they assume 6,400 megawatts of gas generation just vanishes during a storm.
They are stress testing for the worst-case scenario.
They are looking at the pipe and saying, assume it's empty. If we can't survive the simulation with the pipe empty, then we know we need to build more backup.
Speaking of surviving, let's look at how we actually performed this week. We know the snow was historic. Did the grid buckle at all?
It bent, but it didn't break.
Yeah.
And to understand why that is impressive, you have to look at our neighbors. PJM.
PJM interconnection. That's the grid to our west and south.
It's a huge grid. It covers Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland, all the way to Chicago.
Yeah.
And PJM struggled mightily during this storm. They hit all-time winter peak loads. They had to issue emergency alerts asking people to turn off appliances.
Really?
Oh, yes. They were activating demand response, which means paying large factories to shut down to save power. They were on the verge of more serious measures.
And why did they struggle while NYC held steady?
Well, NYC actually consumed more power than forecast, about 3% more, which is a big deal.
That's a big miss for the forecasters.
It is. It means the wind chill was more effective at stripping heat from buildings than even the models predicted. But NYC survived because of interconnection.
We aren't an island.
Electrically, we are part of a massive web. We have huge transmission lines connecting us to PJM, to the New England grid, and of course to Canada.
The extension cords.
Exactly. When our local generation is stressed or when gas is tight, we import power. In 2024, New York imported nearly 39,000 gigawatt hours of energy. During this storm, those lines were humming. We might have been pulling nuclear power from Pennsylvania or hydro from Quebec just to balance the books in Brooklyn.
But there was a physical threat this week, too, that we haven't talked about. Ice.
Ice is the silent assassin of the grid. Snow is heavy and a pain, but ice is truly destructive.
Why is ice so much worse?
2 reasons. One is simple weight. A quarter inch of ice on a power line adds hundreds of pounds of weight per span between poles. Half an inch can snap them. But the second reason is more bizarre. It's a phenomenon called galloping.
Galloping.
When ice forms on a round wire, it doesn't form evenly. It often forms in a teardrop shape, and that turns the round wire into an airfoil, like an airplane wing.
Oh, wow, so the wind hits it.
And it creates aerodynamic lift. The wire literally starts flying. It violently bounces up and down, sometimes several feet in a galloping motion. This creates massive mechanical force. It can snap wooden poles. It can rip steel transmission towers right out of their concrete foundations.
That is terrifying. An electrified jump rope the size of a city block.
We saw warnings for significant ice accumulation in the suburbs this week. And this is where that proactive city management really shines. The utilities did not wait.
I saw the trucks on the news. Con Ed and PSEG trucks everywhere.
They mobilized the Mutual Assistance Network. They brought in line crews from as far away as the Midwest before the first flake even fell. They staged them in hotel parking lots all over the region.
That has to cost a fortune, doesn't it?
It does. Putting 1,000 linemen in hotels and paying them overtime is incredibly expensive. But from a safety management perspective, it's mandatory. Once the snow hits 14 inches, you can't move the big trucks. If the lines start galloping and snapping and you don't have crews already in position, people will freeze in the dark for days.
So we survived 2026. The peakers stayed on, the dual fuel kicked in, the imports flowed, and the trucks were ready. But let's look forward, because the Reliability Needs Assessment Report has a stark warning for the year 2033.
Ah, the 2033 reliability need. This is a fascinating bit of, let's call it bureaucratic sleight of hand.
Explain what you mean.
So in the 2024 assessment, the engineers looked ahead to the year 2033. They saw that the New York Power Authority, or NYPA, plans to retire some more of its gas plants in the city. They saw demand continuing to rise. And they said, uh-oh, we are going to be short. We will have a deficit.
We won't have enough power to meet the rules.
Right, a reliability violation, a blackout risk. But then in a later update, they reran the forecast, and suddenly the violation disappeared.
Did they cancel the plant retirement? Did they build a new power plant?
No. They changed the assumption about how fast people would buy EVs and install heat pumps.
They just lowered the demand forecast.
They realized that the real-world electrification adoption was happening slightly slower than the aggressive state policy targets. So by lowering the expected demand in 2033 by just a couple hundred megawatts, the math worked out. The deficit vanished from the spreadsheet.
So are you saying we are safe in 2033 because we are assuming we will fail to meet our climate goals on time?
That is the cynical, but I would argue accurate way to look at it.
Yeah.
We are solving the reliability crisis on paper by betting on a slower clean energy transition. But that is an incredibly risky bet.
Why? What's the risk?
Because what if we're wrong? What if there's a breakthrough in EV sales boom in 2030? What if a massive new data center campus opens in Queens to power AI? The grid margins are razor thin. Relying on low growth as your safety plan is not a robust strategy. It's wishful thinking.
It really feels like we are just kicking the can down the road.
We are. And this brings us to the final piece of the puzzle, which is the interconnection queue.
This sounds like the DMV of the grid.
That's a perfect analogy. If we want to be safe in the future without dirty peaker plants, we need to build a ton of renewables. Solar farms, offshore wind, big battery storage projects. But you can't just build them. You have to plug them into the grid.
And I've heard this is a nightmare.
It used to be a complete logjam. A developer would propose a solar farm, and NESWISO would have to conduct a detailed study to make sure it wouldn't, fry the local grid. That individual study could take years.
The line was just too long.
It was. And ISO's tried to fix this. They've moved to a cluster study approach.
Grouping projects together.
Exactly. Instead of studying one 50-megawatt project, they now study 50 projects in a region all at once. It's more efficient, it shares the cost of necessary upgrades among all the developers, it is speeding things up. But the question is it speeding things up fast enough to replace the old fossil fuel plants we want to retire? That is the race we're running against time.
So let's bring this all back to the listener. You are sitting at home. Maybe your back is sore from shoveling the 14 inches of snow that fell on Washington Heights or Staten Island. You flip a light switch.
And the light comes on.
What should we be thinking about in that moment? What's the so what?
We should think about the trade-offs. That light is on because of a massive complex machine that is balancing on a tightrope every second of every day. It might be on because a regulator made a tough call to allow a dirty plant to keep running in Brooklyn, sacrificing some local air quality for citywide reliability.
It might be on because a tank of heating oil was opened when the gas line pressure dropped, putting more carbon in the air.
It might be on because we imported power from a dam in Quebec or a nuclear plant in Pennsylvania. The hum of the city is not magic. It is management. It is physics and economics and environmental law all fighting with each other in real time.
And we are in a transition. We are moving from the old familiar machine to a new, cleaner machine.
And transitions are inherently dangerous. We are taking apart the plane while we are flying it.
That is a terrifying image.
But it's accurate.
Yeah.
We are dismantling the fossil fuel infrastructure that has, for all its faults, kept us safe and warm for a century. And we are trying to build a new, clean infrastructure fast enough to catch us.
I want to leave the listeners with a final thought, sort of an all our eggs in one basket idea for the future.
Go on.
Right now, today, I have a gas stove. Some people have a gas car. If the grid had failed this week, I would have been cold, but I could boil water on my stove. I could maybe drive to a friend's house in Jersey if the roads were clear.
You had a diversity of energy sources. Redundancy.
Exactly. But in 2040, the state's plan is for me to have an electric car and an electric induction stove and an electric heat pump.
Total electrification, the goal.
If the grid fails in that winter storm, I have nothing. I can't cook, I can't drive, I can't heat my home.
You are 100% dependent on that one wire coming into your house.
So the stakes for city management for getting this right are getting higher every single year. If we were going to put all our eggs in the electric basket, that basket had better be made of titanium.
And right now, looking at the STAR report, looking at the peaker delays, looking at the interconnection queue, that basket is still a work in progress.
That is the reality check we needed. We made it through Winter Storm Fern, but the real test, the one we are building toward, is still coming.
It is.
We will keep tracking the cleanup and the grid numbers as they come out. Thank you for listening to The Deep Dive. Stay warm, stay safe, and maybe respect the infrastructure a little more.
Take care, everyone.